take up 6 floors just for customer service? Just service, Augustine's corrected. We don't make a distinction. Customers, employees' families, the community, it's all just service. He led Ben through a door that opened into a huge, clear space filled with workbenches that were loaded with chairs and pieces of chairs in every state of disassembly and disrepair. This is repair, which of course part of service. Every Allen and Augustine chair carries a lifetime guarantee. Your chair breaks or gets wobbly, you send it to us, we'll pay shipping, we fix it and ship it back. No charge to you. Ben was well aware of Allen and Augustine's famous guarantee. He was tempted to say, no wonder you're going broke. But he held his tongue. Crazy, huh? Augustine laughed. I know, that's what they all said when we first put the policy in place. That was 28 years ago. Now everyone's copying us. Augustine's impromptu tour book, Ben, through the 3rd floor, which housed the employee gym and ping pong stadium. Competition's intense in this room, Augustine observed solemnly. And the 4th, which included the employee kitchen, a lot of creativity happens here, and the nursery daycare center. Hiya, Amy, he called out as he strode through the big daycare space on their way back to the elevator. His wave was returned wordlessly by an enormously pregnant woman, who sat in a large chair reading a book to the collection of spellbound children gathered around her. People seem to love this place, commented Ben as they headed for the 5th floor. Our people are this place, Augustine replied. Most folks think that Allen and Augustine builds chairs, he added, and I suppose that's true. But what we really build is people. By this time they had been through 3 floors, and Ben decided to ask the question that had been nagging in the back of his mind. So where exactly is your office? Augustine laughed. Well, now that's a good question. I guess you could say you're walking through it. Ben looked puzzled. I don't really have an office, per se. I spend my time pretty much up and down and all over these 6 floors. As he spoke, they approached a scatter of desks, stools, tables, and upright panels festooned with dozens of maps with large green areas drawn on and covered with pushpins. No office, per se? The woman speaking sat at the center of this command post and was just hanging up a phone with a slightly beleaguered expression. He doesn't have a home, per se. I swear the man sleeps here. Augustine shrugged and gave an embarrassing grin. Only sometimes. Hi, you've got to be Ben. The woman stuck out her hand. I'm Annie. She looked at Augustine. And I quit. Her deadpan was so perfect that Ben held his breath until he realized from Augustine's grin that Annie was pulling his leg. Yeah, Augustine nodded. I'll call personnel, so how's it coming? At that moment, another phone on the desk rang. Hang on a second. She picked up the phone and said, yeah. She shot a weary look at Augustine and slowly shook her head as she listened. Okay, she sighed in the phone. Well, let me know. Then to Augustine, not so good. I'm working on a possible lead, but we haven't been able to reach him yet. As Annie turned to speak with another employee, Augustine explained the situation to Ben. A shipment of exotic hardwood, which they needed to complete a major custom order, had been turned away from the port on entry because of some import regulations, technically politics, Augustine snorted, and was now back on a steamer bound for somewhere in Asia, where it had originated. If we don't fulfill that order, Annie chimed in, it will really hurt us. I know you're on it, Annie said, Augustine. As he and Ben turned and began heading back toward the elevator, he added, I don't know if this problem can be solved or not, but I'll tell you this. If anyone can find a way, it's Annie. She's the most resourceful person I've ever met. From the corner of his eye, Ben glimpsed a brief smile slip across Annie's face as she turned and picked up her phone again. Obviously, she'd overheard the remarks. He suspected that had been intentional on Augustine's part. One more reason we vastly prefer to work with all of the domestic stock, Augustine was saying as they headed for the elevator. But these days we can't afford to be choosy. What the customer wants, the customer gets. Just then they heard a loud cheer followed by a burst of an applause from a huddle of employees gathered around Annie's desk before them. Augustine turned and watched them beaming. Unless I missed my guess, Annie just came through again. Sure enough, they learned as they walked back to the scene, Annie's lead had finally come through. She had managed to track down a high-end home builder a few states away who had had a mission upgrade project cancel on him. and was looking to unload his stock of special lumber, including exactly the rare wood Augustine needed. "We're safe," said Augustine. After a few moments of walking back toward the elevator again in silence, he added, "For today, anyway." Ben instantly recognized this as a perfect moment to press his advantage and make his pitch. Augustine knew as well as Ben did how financially hemmed in they were. That was after all, why he was here. But as he opened his mouth to make his play, he had a sudden image of Aunt Ellie saying, "Pull, not push." He closed his mouth again. As they entered the elevator to head up the door up to the next floor, he said, "So, Annie, wow, she's a gold mine. Where'd you find her?" Augustine chuckled. "When Annie first showed up here, she was a single mom with 2 kids to feed. Never finished college, 0 skills to speak of." He took his head and marveling. But she had one thing you couldn't miss: empathy. She could listen to people and they'd feel heard. Know what I mean? They did know exactly what he meant. Mulaney was like that. When Ben talked, Mel not only listened carefully to every word, it felt as though she listened through the words. She seemed to get what he was saying, even when he didn't feel he was doing a very good job saying it. So Augustine continued. "We put on the phones, and she was great. Everyone loved her. A few years later, we really needed someone to run sourcing, so I offered it to her." "Wait, to run the department? I thought she had no skills." "0, you said. What happened?" Arriving at the 6th floor, Augustine stepped out and turned to look at Ben, pondering his question. "What happened? Well, I guess I saw something in her that she didn't see in herself. You know what Winston Churchill had said about this," he said. "I have found that the best way to get another to acquire a virtue is to input in him, or to her in this case." Augustine shook his head and laughed. "I just love that. Give people something good to live up to, something great, and they'll usually will. In fact, often they'll even exceed those expectations." Noting a look of skepticism that flashed across Ben's face, Augustine boomed another big laugh, then took Ben by the arm and said, "Look here for a moment." He turned and sat down on one of the broad hardwood benches that lined the wall, ushering Ben to sit with him. "You know about her colors." In fact, Ben had noticed this, but hadn't given any thought. The bench seat was shot through with threads and ribbons of brilliant colors, a palette of oranges and reds, tans and greens and yellows that reminded him of Vermont fall foliage. It was gorgeous. "New England in October," he commented. Suddenly he was curious. "So how exactly do you get those colors? That isn't paint. Is it some kind of dye?" Augustine grinned. "Nope. None of our woods are dyed, stained, or, heaven forbid, painted. No solvent, no chemicals. We apply a clear varnish to protect it. That's it. But the coloring, that's our secret pattern process. You'll never guess where those colors come from." Ben shook his head. He had absolutely no idea. Augustine ran his hands along the polished plank. "Alan tell you about the big fire?" He nodded incredibly. "You lost everything." Augustine looked pensive. In a way, lost and found. He thought for a moment, then went on, speaking quietly, almost as if talking to himself. "Isn't that how it always is? Just when you think you've lost something so precious, you can't ever recover from it, and then, if you keep your eyes open and your heart open, you find that the loss has made room for something else of great value, something you would never have found otherwise?" In fact, Ben did indeed know what it was like to lose something precious, and he sure didn't see how that could lead to anything good. He also wasn't sure whether Augustine's amusing invite or reply or not. After a moment he said, "So you're saying that fire somehow turned out to be a positive?" Augustine smiled. "While we were poking through the charred mess the next day, we noticed something. A few of the larger, rough-cut maple planks hadn't burned, but they had been steeped in intense steam when the fire department sprayed the first hit the place. They had not burst into flame, but they had burst into color. They had started experimenting," he explained, "and in time had come up with a method of heating the raw, untreated hardwood planks that brought out the natural sugars in the wood, sort of like caramelizing." Augustine said, "We cooked the wood, you could say. Done correctly, the process brought out a whole palette of natural hues and shades within the wood itself. Using a variety of woods and varying the heat and cooking time with each, they had developed an amazing array of natural colors. So where did those incredible colors come from? Said Augustine. From inside the wood itself. They were there all the time. He cocked his head in the direction of Annie's station. Something like Annie? People have all sorts of amazing qualities and natural abilities trapped inside them. With the wood, it's knowing how to apply to heat. With the people, it's applying your belief. He looked at Ben. The other day, you described us as one of the city's great success stories. That's the key to our success right there. Strategies and plans, projections and roadmaps. They don't make things move. They don't make things happen. If you're going to get anything done, you have to engage people. He placed his hand on his chest and patted his heart a few times. And that starts here. Ben nodded as he saw his moment. Preliminaries were over. It was time to engage, to take charge. Well, that segues pretty well into the reason I'm here. Is it okay if we talk about the current situation for a moment? Of course, said Augustine. Ben ran his hand along the smooth plank just as Augustine had done, marveling at the colors. It would be obvious to any observer, he said, that your people are doing an incredible job. But it's also obvious that they're fighting an uphill battle. Honestly, I think a yes vote Monday would open up a whole new chapter for Alan and Augustine, and he proceeded to lay out his case for the merger. Augustine listened, nodding, and didn't say a word until Ben was finished. Then he nodded one more time, slowly, and he put his hand on Ben's shoulders. When we started, there were just two of us, Alan and me, and a few friends working out of an abandoned church. You saw your first chair upstairs. Ben nodded. Did you know that was made out of wood from one of the church's front pews? Those first few dozen chairs we made by pulling apart our own office. He chuckled, shaking his head, and then the fire finished the job for us. Amazing. He stood up and pressed the elevator's down button. Ben had the sense that their tour was over. As I said, Augustine continued, we were just a handful back then, and today we're 500 people. 500. I've never fired a single employee. The terms layoff and cutback are not in our vocabulary, and we're not about to start now. I like you, Ben, but I'm not naive. If you guys buy us, you and I both know what happens next. I lose half my people like so many spare parts, maybe more than half, and I'm not going to stand by and let that happen. Ben started to protest. Ben, as Augustine held up his hand to stop him. Look, you've got your job to do, and I respect that. I have mine and my job. He nodded toward the halls and an airy open office space of the 6th floor where dozens of Allen and Augustine employees sat talking on phones to users of their fine chairs all over the country. Is their jobs. Alright, we're on chapter 6, page 51. Do that one tomorrow. Hope everybody's still motivated. Yeah, I know I say motivated a lot. Can't help it. That's who I am. Alright. We're going to go here, and then we're going to go ahead and end it for tonight. I'm going to say a couple things after I get done with this, and then we will go ahead and end it for tonight, and I will let a few people know a few things. This is by Phyllis Milchin. We're short on heroes these days. Too often those who might have dared greatly have traded risk for their fully insured, fully employed, fully smothered daily existence. Hungry for life. Our children watch us and wonder what it's all about. There is no challenge big enough for them, no vision to run toward eagerly, no philosophy to give us fire to their living, no fierce joy to give sense to their dying. But they listen to Willie Unsold, death, he told them, is not too great a price to pay for a life fully lived. Mary Parker Follett. The most successful leader of all is one who sees another picture not realized. He sees the things which belong in his present picture, but which are not there yet. Above all, he should make his co-workers see that it is not his purpose which is to achieve, but a common purpose, born of the desires and the activities of the group. And last is by T.E. Lawrence. All men dream, but not equally. Those who dream by night in the dusty recesses of their minds awake to find that it was vanity. But the dreamers of day are dangerous men, that they may act their dreams with open eyes to make it possible. Alright, everybody. It's what's inside of each of us is where the greatness comes from. It's thinking outside the box and doing the most uncommon thing. In the Marine Corps, we have a saying, uncommon valor is a common virtue. You know, Medal of Honors do not get put on just anybody. They don't get put on politicians. They don't get put on, people that get the keys to the city and stuff like that. Medal of Honor is given to those that do the very thing that all of us can do, but we have made choices not to. Because when you make certain choices in your life, and this is what I think in today's world we all have to start doing. When you go into something, you have to not have a way back. When you go, your immediate response is, I'm doing this for the better good, and I will not survive this. It's not the physical aspect of you dying is what I'm talking about. It's when you do something is the person you were has to die. The person you want to be is just out there, but you have to take the hill. You have to grab the machine gun. You've got to fight off the enemy. You have to protect all those around you. You have to throw yourself on a grenade. Not a literal one. Please do not take me literally. I watched some of the greatest businessmen in business and how they got started and where they went to and where they became. And I saw the ones that were great and the ones that were just going over actions and they lost everything and they never tried again. I watch people lose fortunes and not get another dime, yet then I watch others lose fortunes and they make it back twice, if not 3 times, if not triple the amount, because they learned from their failures, they learned from their mistakes. They became the person they needed to become, and they left the other person dead in the ground, meaning themselves. So many of you are afraid to realize or see your full potential. You're afraid because you have been taught over time not to do basic skills because it was there to protect you when you were small. But now that you're older, you're still doing those same habits. You're still going down the same road. You're still talking with the same people. You're still reading from the same scripture. You're still coming up with the same ideas without anything new. And the key to that is the word same. When you step outside your box, when you live outside, it means you're doing something different now. You have to learn to go down a different road and forget about the last road you went down. You have to think of new ideas and leave the other ideas in the past. When you go to a new business, you have to look at that business for what it is and what greatness you can bring to it because your other one's gone now. So the point is this: nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you don't learn to step outside your box, if you do not learn to step outside your comfort zone, then it doesn't matter what you tell anybody. It doesn't matter what you say to anybody. As I tell everybody to go and look at Art Williams on YouTube. The whole idea is, hey Art, look at me now. Hey Art, I'm going to do this. Hey Art, no, but you didn't do it. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, if. It's kind of like I say when it comes to people going to join the Marine Corps. Every year around Memorial Day, around Veterans Day, around different times, you'd be surprised how many times in a month I get somebody that comes up to me and they tell me, well, I was going to join the Marines. I could have joined the Marines. Well, if I joined the Marines, I should have joined the Marines. I could have joined. Shoulda, coulda, wolf. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, if. But never did. I was going to join the Army. I was going to join the Navy. I was going to join the Coast Guard. I was going to join this. I was going to do that. And every one of them's got an excuse. these, if you look at their lives, anybody that tells you this, and you look at their lives, you can see that they live within a comfort level. They never dared themselves. They never challenged themselves to get out to do it. They had the excuses on their mind. Then you look at a Medal of Honor recipient, or a Purple Heart, or somebody that got the Silver Star or the Bronze Star, or you look at somebody that retired from the military, or look at somebody that, they fought on. They did what others couldn't do. They fought with bullet holes in them. They fought with tourniquets. They fought, with fevers. They fought with the black fever. They never used health as a reason not to defend those that they cared about and to keep pushing forward. In World War II, Japanese, the Navy and the Army didn't get along, but in World War II, there was more Japanese for every one American. I think equal, 20 or 30 Japanese. They were they were a superpower. They had a strength like no other. We could have very easily have said we're done. Germany was just, they took over France. They basically were beating the crap out of Russia. Great Britain was doing everything. They had their campaign down in Africa. And at any time, they could have said, we surrender and given everything to Germany, because Germany almost won the war. Let's face it, all these people, yes, Hitler was a drug addict later on. Who cares about that part? But it took new technologies. It took thinking outside the box, It took, working with Stalin. And it took working with Churchill. I do know that MacArthur, he went into the Philippines. He didn't have to, but he made a promise to the Filipino people that he would free the Filipino people. He would liberate the people. He didn't have to, but he did. Now, where does all this come from? It comes from something that's inside of all of us, but some people choose to listen to it, and other people choose to basically squash it because, they don't want to think outside their comfort zone. The Spartans used to have a saying, come home with your sword, or with your shield, or on your shield. Now, I understand the history of Sparta. I understand the history of the Greeks, and stuff like that. I studied it for a very long period of time, but a lot of people don't know is the fighting spirit. It was the spirit to do what others will not do is what gets you ahead. And when Ramses came in and he basically slaughtered the Spartans, and he basically slaughtered the Greeks finally started thinking, we're losing everything